very often you will get asked to either compare the data with different time periods or to show the accumulated amounts of your measures. For this reason, time intelligence is one of the most important features to be used in Power BI. Therefore, in this video, I will show you the top 5 time intelligence functions within Power BI. The time intelligence functions within Power BI are always combined with a measure. For this reason, we should always start by creating a measure. The measure that we will create is the total sales amount. And we can do this by using the sum function. So we sum all the amounts for the sales data to get the total sales amount. And this will then be the basis for all our time intelligence calculations that we will perform in this video. So if we have a look at our data set, we can see that it contains 2 columns which contain dates. So the first one is the date of sale, the second one is the date of shipping. Now Power BI will create 2 different date tables in the background which it will use for the calculations. However, in most scenarios it is better to create your own date table. Especially for time intelligence calculations, this will provide you with more flexibility. It might be, for example, that the fiscal year for your company starts at the 30th of June rather than the 1st of January. Therefore, we will use another date table that I already have created, which is displayed over here. To make the visualizations easier, we are going to create a hierarchy for the dates. Now this also depends on what you would like to use when building the report. However, for this report, we will have a look at different levels using years, months and quarters. And therefore we do not need to go any further in our hierarchy. We can create a hierarchy on the right side by clicking on the highest level of the hierarchy, which is the year level. And then we click on Create Hierarchy. Now the hierarchy for the dates has been created and we need to add the other levels to it. And to do this, we can simply click on it and go to Add to Hierarchy. So now we have added the quarters as well. And lastly, we will add the month name. Now we can see that the hierarchy has been created from the sign at the left of the field, which is this one. So the first function that we will discuss for the time intelligence within Power BI is the total year-to-date function. In the case of the sales amount, it will show the amount of sales that has been generated throughout the year. We can use this function by creating another measure, and within this measure we are going to use the total sales that we have created at the beginning. So to calculate the year-to-date sales, we use the total year-to-date function in a new measure. Now in order for this measure to work properly, we need at least 2 arguments. So the first one is the expression, and this is the measure that you would like to use for the year-to-date calculation. So in our case, this is the total sales amount. Now Power BI would like to know which dates it should use for the calculation. And for this we have created a separate date table. And at the end of the video, there's a very useful tip that shows you why we have created this date table as well. So now we create the measure. So we add date table and press enter. Now the year-to-date sales measure has been created. Now to demonstrate how this function works within Power BI, I'm going to create a line chart and a table. So we add the line chart at the top and the table below. In here we put the year-to-date sales measure and the year hierarchy which we have created at the beginning of the video. Because this is a year-to-date calculation, we can see that the table as well as the chart accumulates over the year. So it goes all the way up to the end of 2020, and when it reaches the last day it goes back to 0. And this is the drop you can see in the graph over here. Also in the table we can see the sales figures accumulating over the year until the 31st of December, and then it goes back to 0. So if we look at the 31st of December, it accumulates, and then in January it goes back to 0 and starts all over again. So this is how the year-to-date function works. The second useful function for time intelligence is the quarter-to-date function. In principle, this can be created in the same way as the previous function. However, the only thing we change is the function that we use. And this function is called total quarter-to-date. The expression as well as the dates stay the same. So to calculate the quarter-to-date sales, we create a new measure and call it quarter-to-date sales. And then we use the total quarter-to-date function. So the expression stays the same, which is the total sales amount, and the date table also hasn't changed. So now we have created and calculated the quarter-to-date sales. So when we insert the calculation into the chart, we can see that it accumulates the sales until the end of the quarter. So for January, February and March, the numbers increase. And then at the beginning of April, it starts again at 0 and starts increasing again. And this is also shown in the table. If we add the measure to the table, we can see the numbers increasing until the end of quarter 1, and then we start all over again. Also in quarter 3, we can see that the numbers increase until the end of June, and then the 1st of July we start again at 0. So this is how the quarter-to-date function works. The last function that accumulates a sales amount over a given time period is the month-to-date function. So if we create a new measure, here also the arguments within the function stay the same. So these are the month-to-date sales, and we use the total month-to-date function. So the expression again is the total sales amount, and the date table still hasn't changed. So now we have created the month-to-date sales measure. So when we have a look at the result of this function in the chart and table, we can see that it works quite the same as the other functions. So the chart and the table accumulate the figures until the end of the month, and once a new month starts, it goes back to 0 and starts accumulating again. This is also seen in the table. So for example, May, it accumulates, the numbers start increasing, and then in June we start back again at 0. And this is how the month-to-date function works. Number 4 of the useful functions within PowerBI is the Dateadd function. This function allows you to compare your measures across different time periods. In contrast to the functions mentioned before, this function does not accumulate the amounts but show you the amount in a given period. Because we want to use the Dateadd function to look at the sales of the previous quarter, we can use it in combination with the calculate function. Therefore we start in by typing calculate. After this we are asked which measure we would like to use for our calculation, and this is the total sales amount. We now place the Dateadd function. This function requires 3 arguments. In the first one, we need to let PowerBI know what the dates are to be used for the calculation. In this case, this is our date table. Then the function asks the number of intervals. Because we only want to look one interval back, we insert -1. At last, the type of interval should be specified. Here we can choose between year, quarter, month or day. Because we would like to have a look at the previous quarter, we therefore use quarter. Now the measure of the sales for the previous quarter has been created. If you want to adjust this measure, we can adjust either the number of intervals over here or the interval itself. For example, if you would like to see the sales of 2 months ago, the number of intervals should become 2 and the interval itself would be changed to months. When we add this calculation to a table with years and quarters, we can see the result of it. The Dateadd function now displays the sales of the previous quarter. Here we can see the relationship between the sales of the prior quarter and the quarter-to-date sales. In this way we can confirm that the Dateadd function works like it should. The last function that will really help you in analyzing your data is the Sameperiodlastyear function. This function shows you exactly what it says. It takes the amount of the period in this year and shows you the amount of last year. If we're talking about quarter 1 of 2021, we can compare it with quarter 1 of 2020. On the other hand, if you look at March 2021, it will show you March 2020. So to create this measure, we again start with the calculate function. Then we are asked which expression we want to use. And this is again the total sales amount. Then for the filter, we use the same period last year function. The only argument that is required is the date table it should refer to. We insert it and then we have created the measure. So we insert the date table. Now we have created the same period last year measure for sales. Now if we add this measure to the table below, we can see it on a quarter level. So quarter 1 of 2021 refers back to quarter 1 of 2020. So these numbers are the same. So it refers to the same period, so quarter 2, but then of last year. So again, here, this is the same. This one is the same as this one. So this is how the same period last year function should work. Now because you have made it so far into the video, I would like to give you a bonus tip. At the beginning of this video we discussed the year-to-date function. Now within this function we have to insert multiple arguments. Starting with the expression, which is the total sales amount in this case. Secondly, the date table it should refer to. However, there are more arguments that we can use within this function, and this is very useful when you have a fiscal year that is not the same as the calendar year. So let's say our fiscal year ends on the 30th of June. Then we can add 2 more arguments into the function to let Power BI know that the fiscal year ends on the 30th of June. So for the third argument, which is the filter, we use the all filter. And this function ignores all the filters that are related to the date table. And we do this by using the all function. So we use all, and then we tell it to ignore all the filters coming from the date table. Then at the end, we specify when the fiscal year ends. For this scenario, this is the 30th of June. If we now look at the graph and the table, we see that indeed the chart accumulates until the end of June and then again starts at 0 at the 1st of July. This is the same in the table where the number increases all the way to the end of June and then begins again on the 1st of July. And this is because we have told Power BI that our year ends at this specific date. What you need to remember from this video is that time intelligence is very important for analyzing your data. You can use functions such as year to date, quarter to date, month to date, Dateadd, and same period last year. Also, if you have a different fiscal year, then you can adjust the year-to-date function to your needs. Now if you like this video and you would like to learn more about business analytics in the future, you can subscribe to the channel. Also let me know in the comments if you subscribed and what you would like to learn next. Thank you for watching.